Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this topic this afternoon. Before I start talking about free education in Sri Lanka and professionals going overseas for employment, I thought I should tell you what I know about the Rotary Club and what was my first impression of Rotary Club. Actually, I think it was in early 1990s, Raja, I first heard about Rotary Club in a big way. I don't know how many of you can remember what you did in 1995 together with UNICEF. And you spoke to the LTT at that time during the war and undertook a project. Can you remember? Polio immunization. That created a big impression of Rotary Club in me. In fact, I did not really understand the gravity of what you did then, but when I was invited to speak here, when I reflected on it once again, I understood the gravity and the importance of what you undertook. Rotary Club in 1995, together with UNICEF, started a program to make Sri Lanka polio free, make the world polio free. And at that time, obviously, the Rotary Club spoke to the government and communicated your intentions and wanted help to do that program. The government told the Rotary Club, as I remember, to do the vaccination or immunization program only in the government controlled areas. But the Rotary Club did not accept it. Because as your motto goes, creating hope in the world. What did you want to do? You did not want to leave a single child behind in your immunization program. So you spoke to the LTT and agreed on a ceasefire. And you did the immunization program and made Sri Lanka polio free. I must salute the Rotary Club for that initiative because you wanted a clear outcome in that program. Your program was not limited to a series of activities. You are not satisfied only with the activities you were doing, but you wanted to achieve an outcome. And that outcome was to make Sri Lanka polio free. I think the last polio case reported in Sri Lanka was reported some 20 years ago. Thereafter, we haven't had any polio cases in Sri Lanka. And that's thanks to the Rotary Club. So that is the impression I have of Rotary Club. And I consider Rotarians as people who are outcome oriented. Outcome oriented. And you have a purpose, you want to achieve that purpose, and you need to see a clear outcome. That is how I see Rotarians. Right. Then talking about the subject, the free education in Sri Lanka. Free education in Sri Lanka was started by the late C.W. Kannangara in 1945. And what was the objective? When he started the free education program in Sri Lanka, what he wanted to do was to provide equal opportunities for education to all our children. He did not want to leave a single child behind. For what purpose? To create a Sri Lanka where you lay a strong foundation for sustainable economic development. That was the aim of free education as envisioned by the founder C.W. Kannangara. But in my opinion, over the last 70 years, what we have achieved is that we have only skeletons of free education in Sri Lanka. Why I am saying that is that free education has not, in my opinion, achieved the purpose for which it was introduced. It has not been able to lay a strong foundation to achieve sustainable economic development in this country. Because in Sri Lanka, we have about a little over 4 million children going to school for free education. Of the 4 million children, this is not about statistics, but of the 4 million children, about 400,000 children leave the school every year. About 350,000, 370,000 children sit for A-levels, and of them about 40,000 children go to state universities. and another about 30,000 children go overseas for foreign employment, or they receive private education through the local universities, private local universities in Sri Lanka. And then there is another about 25,000 children who go to various vocational training institutes and acquire technical skills. So we are talking of 100,000 children out of 370,000 children receiving tertiary education and coming out as the products of tertiary education. Then what happens to the balance 270,000 children? This balance 270,000 children come to the labor market as unskilled labor, and we leave 270,000 behind. So that is what we have achieved through free education. We have not provided right to education. We have given them opportunity, but we have not provided, or we have failed to provide right to education for our children. Now, what is important to understand is education. When I look at this topic, I want to take it in two parts. I don't like to talk about free education from the point of view of professionals migrating for overseas employment. For me, these are two separate issues. Free education is one issue. Professionals migrating for overseas employment is another issue. Now, through our free education system, as I said, we leave 270,000 children behind, and they become unskilled labor. And through that, we send our females as domestic workers to other countries to earn foreign exchange, but they are products of free education. Because in Sri Lanka, 99% of the children, actually it's almost 100% of children receive primary and secondary education. But we have not been able to achieve an outcome like the Rotarians did in 1995. There is no outcome. What is our outcome from this free education system? Why I want to talk about the outcome is, we have to look at education from a global perspective. We are competing with the rest of the world when we talk about educating our children. So educating our children should be with the aim of giving them necessary skills to compete in the world market. Now in this context, I wish to draw your attention to a program called PISA. I don't know how many of you have heard about this. PISA, P-I-S-A, Program for International Student Assessment. Now this is done by OECD countries, and the program is to find out the best students. Which country produces the best students in the world? Now, this program identifies the student's ability to use his skills, reading, mathematics and science skills, in day-to-day activities. How they use, how they apply the skills they have acquired through education in their day-to-day activities and their normal work life. Then the second thing is, to what extent they can laterally think outside the subject, in related and unrelated subjects, how they think, how they approach, how they take challenges, how they face challenges with the knowledge they have gained in their education process. Who produces the best children in the world? Best students in the world? Any guess? China. China produces the best children in the world. Best students in the world are produced by China. Second comes Singapore. Third comes Estonia. That little country in Northern Europe. Now, the significance here is, Sri Lanka is nowhere. Sri Lanka is not in the program. Sri Lanka is nowhere. So, what is important for us to understand is, China produces best students in the world by providing education to nearly 300 million children every year. So 30 million children, if you divide it by 10 or 11, say 25 to 30 million children come out of Chinese education system as best students in the world. Singapore can't do that, providing education to 400 to 500,000 children. We are nowhere educating 4.1 million children. So what does it mean? We spend 350 billion rupees of taxpayers' money on our education. What is the purpose? What have we achieved? We haven't achieved anything. What we have achieved is basically we take the cream of children and make them half-baked products who cannot compete with the rest of the world. In fact, recently I was talking to about 200 chartered accountants on the same subject, not on the same subject but on a related subject. So what I told them was, I am also a product of that education system. What does that mean? We don't have the necessary skills to use our knowledge in our day-to-day life compared with other students coming out of other countries. And we don't have the skills to laterally think. And vast majority of you, if you have studied in Sri Lanka, if you have come through the free education system, you also have that handicap. We need to understand that. So this is one major problem. And then the free education system also has not achieved other outcomes like in other countries. Now, if you go to Singapore, education ministry outcomes. Singapore, like we spend 350 billion rupees for our education system, but we have no outcomes. What are we going to achieve? We can talk about 10,400 schools we have in the country. 3,000 of them have A-level classes. Then of them, how many schools have science, maths and English classes? We can talk about statistics, but these not about statistics. We need to see what are the outcomes we are achieving spending this 350 billion rupees. Basic problem is, if you go to Ministry of Education of Singapore website and find out what the objectives are, what the outcomes are, you will be surprised. Grade 5, when a child comes to grade 5 in Singapore, what do they expect of that child? In Sri Lanka, what do we expect a child to achieve at grade 5? We expect him to get through the grade 5 scholarship exam. Even if it is by copying, doesn't matter, he has to get through the grade 5 scholarship exam. But in Singapore, what is the first outcome? Their outcome is not whether the child can learn English, whether he has studied English, whether he can speak English, Chinese, whether he can do mathematics or science. No, those are not the outcomes. Their first outcome is whether the child can distinguish right from wrong. That is Singapore's first outcome when the child comes to grade 5. But we have no outcome like that. A-level, when the child is out of school, what is Singapore's outcome? What is Singapore's outcome and what is our outcome? Our outcome is whether the child can get 3 A's and whether he can go to a university. But Singapore's outcome is not like that. Singapore's outcome, you can check. I checked it yesterday for this speech and made sure that those are listed in their website, because I know you will Google and see whether I am telling the truth. Right? And you are free to do. Please do. Singapore, when a child is out of school, the outcome Singapore government expects is he should know what moral integrity is. Child should know what moral integrity is. That is what Singapore expects out of a child when he is out of school. In Sri Lanka, we expect the child to get 3 A's, go to a university, whether he can gain productive employment. Then you talk about tertiary education, because in Sri Lanka, tertiary education is also free. You can become a doctor in Sri Lanka without paying a cent. I became a graduate without paying a cent in Sri Lanka. But when it comes to tertiary education, what is Singapore's outcome? And what is Sri Lanka's outcome? Our outcome is whether he can find a job. And for that matter, the children try to find pensionable jobs in the government sector. Why? Why? Actually, I am not exaggerating. Recently, I was talking to university intake and I asked them, how many of them wanted to join the public sector? Good 75% of them raised their hands. And I was shocked. Why? Because it's a pension and no work. Now, in Singapore, what they expect of a graduate is something different. He should be able to speak up for the right thing. That is the first outcome Singapore expects. So we have no values like that. So what does it mean? In Singapore, you create an ethical society through the education system. That ethical society creates an ethical government and ethical leadership. In Sri Lanka, through our education system, we produce a society that is not based on ethics. Basically unethical. Through that unethical society, we create unethical government. And through that, we produce an unethical leadership. That is what has happened in Sri Lanka. So that is the free education. So we have not achieved the purpose of free education as envisioned by its founder, C.W.W. Kannangara. So that's a sad story. So we need to try and talk about this, create this conversation in the society that we need to see an outcome for the money we spent on education. Then we talk about professionals migrating for overseas employment. Now, there are lots of numbers, statistics about this. How many doctors have left? How many engineers have left? How many accountants have left? How many skilled workers have left? And how many unskilled people have left? And today, in the Daily Mirror front page, I saw the Tourism Association president had said that the tourism industry is grappling with exodus of employees leaving for overseas employment. Actually, these hotels don't have enough staff. They overwork because they don't have workers to work. They are all trying to go overseas. But can we blame them for receiving free education but opting to go overseas? I can't blame them. Why? Because when we bring children from our education system to the society, they cannot find gainful employment. If they can't find gainful employment, they will always try to move for better opportunities, finding the most amenable environment to live. If an animal doesn't find water in its habitat, he will move to another habitat where water can be found. So it's the same thing with professionals. Professionals also, if they know that their skills, competencies, and the knowledge cannot be used in this country, and if our economic system cannot support these people coming out of this education system, they will want to go overseas. You can't stop them. But as a country, we should be able to anchor them here. We should not uproot these children completely from Sri Lanka. What we do is we completely uproot them from Sri Lanka. Even if they go overseas, if they want to keep their money overseas, if they are thinking of keeping money in Singapore, Dubai, London or Switzerland or wherever, they should think of keeping their money in Sri Lanka as the first option. For that, we have to create the environment here that they feel that their money is safe here, their wealth is safe here. If we can create that, then these people will send their money here without keeping money overseas. So we have not been able to create that environment. So professionals going overseas is a big problem, but we can't blame them. Because free education system is taking care of only about 100,000 children out of about 375,000 children. So imagine if we leave no child behind and make all these 375 children very skillful children, very skillful students, definitely this economy cannot find employment opportunities for them. They will want to go overseas. It does not matter. Now if you see world's leading CEOs, Google, Microsoft, FedEx, Indian CEOs, I can give you a list of Indian CEOs, but 90% of them have received their primary and sometimes secondary education, tertiary education in India. Now, Google CEO, I think he's Sundar Pichai, right? And he is a product of Indian Institute of Technology. So, these countries have produced children who can take on the world, and we have not done that. We have not been able to do that. Although we boast about the free education system we have not been able to achieve the outcome we wanted to achieve. That is the problem. And the vision I have for education in Sri Lanka is we should leave no child behind. We should give education opportunities to children and make them the best children in the world, best students in the world, so that they can compete with students coming from anywhere in the world. And without doing that, we cannot create a prosperous Sri Lanka. It does not matter even if professionals go overseas, does not matter, but we should not completely uproot them from Sri Lanka. We should make sure that they have their roots here. If they want to send their children for education overseas, first country that should come to their mind should be Sri Lanka. We should have an education system that can create that kind of talent and competencies. We should look at creating world-class competencies. Thank you very much.